Hello, everybody. It's Elagatua. We got another game to cover. Finally, I think, we're gonna have two videos this month for the first time in a long time, and we're gonna be back in the Quack Cup for this video. But before we get started, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for your kind messages after the last video. Things have, gotten substantially better for me in the last couple of weeks physically. So thank you for all your kind words. I just really appreciate the community. You guys are all awesome. We'll talk more about that at the end of the video with some more like personal stuff. But for now, let's do some Advance Wars. That's what we're here for, right? So we are back in the Quack Cup 6. This is going to be round number 4. And if you've not been watching the Quack Cup so far, this time the gimmick is fog tags. And of course, all you need to get me to show up is those magical 3 letters FOG. So I have been on a rampage in this tournament already, and we are to the bracket finals, which is not the same thing as the overall finals. But this is essentially the round of 16 in the grand scheme of things. And then after this round, there will be a break to let all the remaining 8 brackets, I think there's like 2 left after this game, to complete before the finals will get started. So definitely the toughest match of the bracket coming up for me. And before we talk more about my matchup, let's review this map a little bit. This is a map that I've covered in another video, infamously the extraordinarily long video from the finals of Smacky Cup 3. This is Dragons in the Dark, and if you want to see me talk about all the details of this map, you can watch that video, which I believe is, I think it was 4 hours long, maybe a little longer than that. It was for sure the longest video I've ever done, and so you'll hear more than you ever want to know about this map there. We will not be doing a full map breakdown in this video because we've covered it already, but I will just briefly go over the core ideas to catch you up in case you don't want to go back to the very beginning. So you're looking at 4 contested properties just right down this middle. These are the 4 that matter. And then you've also got these very important mountains in the center. And so those are going to be your main, I guess, objectives on the map. And this is a 2 comm tower map. So we've got towers here and here. And these towers are relatively safe, so you can pretty much count on having 2 towers for the majority of the game. And you also have a very, very forward airport. So air units are going to be of great importance on this map. I think that about covers all of the basics that we need to recap. So let's start talking about the CO selections for this map. This is kind of a tier 3 plus tier 4 combination, so much less crazy than some of the other tiers that we've had in this tournament so far. And so on the top box, you see your standard tier 3 mainstays like Kindle and Drake is banned. I didn't even realize Drake was banned. Huh. I guess that makes sense. Global damage in tags is pretty nuts. So funny that I didn't even know that was banned. Kindle and Rachel, we've seen a couple of Rachel picks thrown in the mix from a couple of players. Andy, tier 3 as well. And then kind of your standard tier 4 CO pool that doesn't get picked too much. And then for the tag partner, it's just tier 4. You have Lash and Sonya in there, but those are certainly less common options. And Sonya, especially in tags, is really, really abysmal because her powers are kind of more defensive focused. And in tags, the name of the game is use your CO power and then swap. And you get the benefit of the CO power on your turn, and then you swap to the other CO, which kind of cancels the power and allows you to then start immediately gaining charge when you would normally have one turn where you're kind of locked out from getting charge. And so offensive CO power is very, very strong. Defensive CO powers, well, you don't really want to be having your defensive CO powers canceled. So that makes any CO with a defensive power especially bad in tags. And so that's why you've seen Javier available in fog tags when normally he would be a tier 1 CO, but his power is kind of defensive focused. And so he's been kind of retuned experimentally based on that. But no Javier in this match. And there are a number of good combinations here to pick from. Rachel, certainly pretty good on this map compared with most 3-base fog maps, because this is a relatively low income map. I believe you're looking at even income as 20k, and the properties along that center line are very, very contested. And so it's not uncommon to see some of those properties remain uncaptured well into the mid game, if not longer. So you could very reasonably see a game where both players are in like the 18 to 19k range for the majority of it, which means that you're going to have a lot of infantry, because 18 to 19k is pretty much the perfect amount of money for copter tank infantry, or copter AA infantry, or copter recon infantry, something like that. But especially with the back base being so far back in the tops and bottoms of the map, that's pretty much it's almost always exclusively an infantry base. So there's just going to be a lot of infantry, and a lot of this map boils down to pushing unit count. And the more infantry you've got going on, that does benefit Rachel to a decent degree. You're going to get those. You're going to force a lot of infantry clumping, and it just kind of slows the game down and lets her get more out of her powers. And then obviously having kind of it's not exactly global damage, but being able to drop missiles and do it as soon as your charge meter is full works well with the idea of the tags and being able to generate charge more quickly than you would in other matchups. So Rachel, a little better than usual on this map and getting some picks. Obviously Kindle, Kindle's just incredible. Obviously Kindle's probably never going to be a wrong pick on this map, and we see a lot of Kindle picks. And as far as the tier 4 COs go, I really like Jess on this map, and it's pretty simple why I actually think that Jess is just clearly the best tier 4 CO. Normally with tier 4 COs, I've kind of had a rule of thumb that I generally talk about when I talk about tier 4, which is it kind of doesn't matter too much who you pick in tier 4, because almost always the skill difference between the players is going to end up deciding the outcome of a tier 4 match, more so than the minor differences between the COs. I would not necessarily say that's the case in this specific situation. Jess is really, really good, and Jess is already good on this map, but tags especially really allow her to compensate for her weaknesses even more effectively than you normally could. So let's talk about, first of all, why Jess is so good on this map. So first of all, with 2 towers, Jess's infantry, they're not going to be able to deny captures on their own completely, but they're also they're not having their thresholds really, really gimped too hard. You're getting essentially just like 1 tower infantry, and so they're still useful for fighting, even though you're Jess. So that aspect of it is not too bad. I'm gonna hide these COs while we discuss further, but Jess infantry not bad. Jess copters end up being like 1 tower copters, which are also not bad either. But really, really importantly, on the positive side for Jess with 2 towers hits some pretty important thresholds in terms of one-hit kill mechanics. Jess tanks with 2 towers have a 90% chance to one-shot a recon on planes. And if you look at the terrain on this map, and you see all the planes and the roads, you can see why that might be a really big deal. And there's actually very, very few forests that are in areas where fighting is going to commonly happen. So being able to remove recons in potentially one hit is very, very relevant. Additionally, with tanks, when you've got the Jess bonus with 2 towers, you have a chance to have a tank one-hit KO an infantry on a road. And there's a lot of roads, and especially in the middle, you're going to have infantry on roads. There's kind of no way to avoid that. So that's a thing that can become relevant, and you get really easy wall breaking potential with Jess to be removing infantry in one hit with your tanks. And that's not to even discuss her powers. With turbocharge, you're going to be one-shotting infantry with recons, which is a pretty big deal. And the reinforcement lines on this map are very, very thin, and so it's quite strong for movement boosting CO powers, because this is something that I talked about a lot in the other video, but basically the 2 tank move reinforce line is basically right on this center. And so this base can actually move onto this city in 2 moves, and this base can move onto this city in 2 moves, and then this base can also get adjacent to this city in 2 moves, and likewise on the other side. So when you add +1 vehicle movement to thresholds that are like 1 square off, it actually makes a pretty big difference. And it's going to allow units to reach the fighting more often than they would on other maps where maybe that 1 extra square of movement doesn't really let you get another turn of reinforcements to the combat line. But in this map, it's much more likely to happen. And so those tier 4 COs are all going to be benefiting from that, but especially Jess, because you're going to have just a lot of recons, a lot of tanks, and this map can become very, very brawly, and you have a lot of tank chaining and things like that. And so whoever can bring the most stuff to the fight, that ends up being very, very important for fighting and winning on this map. So I do really like Jess. But not only does Jess benefit from the two towers to kind of compensate for her weaknesses, but Jess also benefits just from being able to swap over to another CO. And the second you swap over to the other CO, well, all your copters are normal copters again, all your infantry are normal infantry again. And that's very, very powerful. So you kind of use Jess for a little bit, especially in the early game, to kind of dominate vision and hunt recons very, very efficiently. And once you start to get into the mid game, you start to lean on your tier 3 partner that's gonna give you really strong CO powers, and you'll be able to fight normally with infantry, and then you're not going to be disincentivized from building all the copters that you want, because you're not going to be suffering from the lowered attack power that Jess is going to have. So I really like Jess as a tier 4 CO. I think she's substantially better than the other tier 4 COs in this format on this map. As far as the tier 3 CO is concerned, to get a little bit ahead of ourselves, actually we're not. I think we're actually pretty close to transitioning into the game here, but I actually decided to go with Andy, which is not a CO that I commonly pick in tier 3. And you may be thinking that I have some grand strategic reason for picking Andy. And I mean, there are some strategic reasons, I suppose, but the 100% ironclad reason that I picked Andy is because no other person in Division 1 had picked Andy yet on this map in this round. And I thought that if I picked Andy, I would be really unlikely to end up in a mirror match, because I wanted to just to have, some meeting of some different COs to get some variety in the gameplay. So that was my primary concern. That being said, I'm not like throwing him on purpose. Like, Andy is perfectly viable on this map, and especially in this format. And let's see, where was I going with this? Right. Because Rachel is better than normal, and some people have been picking Rachel, Andy is actually a very good counter pick to Rachel, because you can kind of counter Rachel's superpower and undo all the damage. And it's a pretty strong counter pick. And you're a little bit weaker against Kindle, but I felt like the novelty was worth the risk, and I just kind of expected I'd probably be going up against Kindle. So in this map, I'm going to be going for an Andy Jess combination. And I think that at this point we have covered everything we need to cover. Why don't we transition into the game? Okay, we're in the game. And if you're looking at the top right, you can probably see that, much to my consternation, my opponent also chose Andy and totally owned my soul in denying me a more interesting matchup. So we've got Andy Adder, AA, against my Andy and Jess. So at least it's not a total mirror, but I was quite annoyed that I didn't get to play against Kendall or Rachel. But I guess... So, backstory. I'm playing against a player named X-OLDMAN, and X-OLDMAN is pretty highly ranked on the ladder. I want to say that he's around top 5 in the current FOG ladder. Let me check the global league real fast. Okay, so I took a look. So actually, this player is a 1650 rated player overall, and current FOG rating is 1500. So right now, this player doesn't have any active games, but if they did, they would be number 3 on the current active FOG player. So this is quite a highly ranked opponent, and I believe this player is actually Chinese or from the China community. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that's the case. And I happen to know that the Chinese meta is a little bit different than maybe the meta overall. And for some reason, I think Andy is a little bit more highly valued in the Chinese meta than elsewhere, where I think Kindle is very, very heavily favored by the meta currently for reasons that I think we're all familiar with. So I guess it kind of makes sense, but I was kind of annoyed that this happened. But regardless, we still got to play the game and do our best. And so I don't think we need to talk about much more than this. I'm going to kind of cover this game a little bit differently than I've done in other replays. And so I'm going to, let's turn off the lights here. And I'm actually going to switch, and we're going to play the first couple of turns as my opponent, because I just think you just take a leap of faith. It's gonna be more exciting that way. All right, so we might be jumping around here and doing some non-traditional coverage, but let's go through the first couple of turns. So we got some standard infantry builds to start. Nothing too exciting going on here. Not completely economic focused. Sending him up here instead of over to here indicates that he wants to try and push some captures. Probably going here next. So not totally efficient, but there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. That's just a decision that you can make. But no day 3 recon or anything exciting like that. I got more captures going on. Day 4, still no vehicles showing up. We finally got the 3rd base captured. And then we got a day 5 tank. So this is a day 5 tank build. This is not a particularly outrageous opener. Having tanks and then sending to the center is a pretty good strategy on this map. And once you get a tank in the center, especially on some of the high defense terrain, it ends up being pretty safe. And you can kind of set up to try and win center. There's really kind of two separate schools of thought. You can either like try to harass sides and go aggressively for the sides, or you can kind of all in mid and try to gain center control. And so it looks like my opponent is basically going to go for the all in mid concept, which is a thing that you can do, and there's nothing wrong with it. So let's jump ahead here. More standard capture stuff happening. A little bit of an early capture on this city, actually. I normally delay this cap a little bit further. But tank goes that way, and we get another tank, so this is just a tank. Gonna chain tanks to the center. And looks like we're gonna go for center control. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. It was at this moment. So if this happened to me, I would probably lose my mind in tilt. But you may be wondering, why do I have an artillery there? That is a really random place for there to be an artillery. It's almost like I knew that tank was going to drive onto that exact square at that exact time. Well, now let's pause our progress through this replay and let's go back in time to explain my opener. Yeah. All right, so we look at the replay viewer here, and we can see that this player has had a couple of games on this map before, and so we're just gonna take a look. Here on this map, this is like a really old Global League game. So let me switch fog over. And my opponent is player 1 again, and look at that. Day 5 tank goes onto the city. Noted. Okay, next game. Player 1 again. Day 5 tank ends up interrupting a cap on the city. Noted. Practice game, presumably leading up to the game. Day 5 tank goes onto the city. If it was just this, what I presume is a practice game, where he did that opener, I wouldn't have thought anything about it. But seeing him do the same exact opener, 3 separate games from player 1, the exact same way on the same map, and then he has the nerve to pick Andy, denying me a more exciting matchup, and I'm just like, you know what? I bet you're going to do it again. And it's a good build. And the reason it's a good build is because it's pretty much risk-free. Like, you end up on day 7 with a tank on the city, and once the tank's on the city, like, it's there. Like, it doesn't matter what your opponent really has done. They're not going to be able to get rid of it, and then you kind of deny this city from getting captured, and you have a lot of leverage over this city, and any sort of recons that show up, you're very strong against them, and you can rely on the mountains for your vision. And so the recons aren't as important. So it's a very sensible opener, and it's very, very safe. And, well, the only way that it wouldn't be safe is if your opponent just decided that they were going to design an opener that specifically countered this opening and this opening alone at the expense of losing to a lot of other openers. And why would anybody do that? That's so risky. Well, let's go back to the game. All right, so we're back, and this time we will be going through the map from my perspective for the first couple of turns. I'm going to be explaining how this opener works. So you probably have some idea of how this thing gets put together, because you know it's going to end up with an artillery on this road. But there's a lot of other considerations that kind of have to go into this, and we're going to cover those as we step through this from my perspective. So first of all, standard infantry stuff, and we are going to be going for the most economic capture route possible. So we are not going to actually be skipping any sort of properties along the way. We are going to be just absolutely maximizing the income that we can get as early as possible at the expense of getting to more contested properties quickly. And the sacrifice here is especially that we're going to be basically delaying a potential capture on this city. Now, if you saw the game that I played in the Spacky Cup 3 finals, you saw that I went very quickly for this city, and that ended up being a pretty good decision, although it got complicated later on. But it's a nice city to be able to go for early, because once recons get on the field, recons from this base can actually land on this city in 2 moves because of all the roads there. They can get there very quickly. So being able to snag that city early before the recons are really out and plentiful on the map can give you a nice economic advantage given how contested all the properties on this map are. But I'm foregoing all that because I need all the money that I can get. And I actually need a perfectly efficient capture route to have all the money that I need to make everything happen that I need to make happen. So that's what's going on here. And so we're just going to continue to capture stuff. We need neutral base and more infantry, more efficient captures, and no skipping of any kind going on here. And now we build our artillery on day 4. And so we needed to have efficient captures to be able to afford that. Although it's not really the artillery that's expensive, it's actually what comes after it. Is more of why we need a perfectly efficient capture route. Now we just continue capturing things, move the artillery down, and then we're going to end up capturing the comm tower. The reason we want to capture the comm tower is we want to have the comm tower capture finished, and then we need to get a bunch of infantry in the middle here. Because in my mind, there's kind of 3 things that can result from this opener. One is my opponent does what we know that they're going to do, which is move the tank onto that city. And that's kind of what the build is designed around. And so that's happy. If that happens, then we're going to feel really good about it. And we don't need to really think about the aftermath more than that because we're kind of winning the RPS in that situation. However, there is a very, very realistic alternative outcome that could happen, which is basically like a day 4 recon to this city, which is definitely something that you do on this map. It is absolutely a build that you see, and I think X-OLDMAN did that against me in this Spacky Cup finals in the other video. So that is definitely realistic, and if that happens, then what that recon on this city is going to see is this artillery just driving to this road and planting there and being like, hope you don't see me. It ends bad. So if that happens, I basically need to have a lot of infantry mid. And we can skip ahead to next turn. So first of all, I built a recon. So this is the next ingredient. We need the recon to kind of help spot for the artillery, and it's going to arrive at the center at the same time. So stuff happens here. So now on my next turn, so we move the recon in. Obviously, we don't see anything, nor should we expect to. Don't see anything. So no early captures here, although it'd be pretty surprising to see an early capture here. Finish the comm tower, and then move our artillery in position. And so the idea here with all these infantry, you can see this infantry here especially, this is kind of unusual movement. This guy is actually going to be coming down here when often, I mean, there's like a lot of uncapped properties over here that infantry could be going for, but we're actually going to be delaying those because we want to have a lot of infantry mid. So the consideration here is if this ends up being a recon, like on one of these 2 squares, well, my artillery is going to get popped by the recon, and that's not great. But if the artillery does get popped by the recon, if we have enough infantry here, we can kind of like try to salvage something where basically we end up with the recon blocking this square, so he goes to here, and then you've got this guy coming here into the forest. You got this guy on the city coming here. Artillery moves back onto the city to repair, and then this infantry goes onto the road, and basically you block in the recon. and you can trap him. And if that happens, it's not good. It doesn't make the trade good because the recon is getting a free hit on your artillery on road, but it's playable because you are Andy. And so, like, if you don't just immediately die, you can kind of have the artillery chill on the back lines, and eventually you're going to get a superpower and it's going to heal up for free. So it's like, it's not game ending. Additionally, you can trap the recon, and there's a good chance that you're going to be able to trap it, unless it's exactly like day 4 recon, like day 6 tank, I think. In which case, then you're losing your recon here, and then the recon also escapes, which if that happens, you're having a real bad day. So there are circumstances in which things can get really, really bad. And I want it to be clear that doing this build is very, very risky. And if I didn't have a strong inclination about what my opponent was going to do, doing this would be way more risky than I'm used to. And traditionally, my openers often fall into the category of like really good against most builds, except for one specific thing that just kills me dead. In this situation, we are kind of the opposite, where this opener is really bad against a lot of things, but there's one thing that it punishes really, really hard. This is exceptional. This is like not what I usually do, but at the same time, in terms of just like being unpredictable as a player, it's good to mix this stuff in every now and then, because just because I'm like, among the top players doesn't mean that I want my opponents to be able to think that I'm going to play a safe way or that they can try to cut corners on me. I want everybody to know that I'm a freaking psychopath, and that you think I won't take risks? I don't want to lose? No, I'll do it. I'm willing to push the envelope and do some unorthodox stuff if I think I've got a read or I think there's some good reason for it. So it's good for the image, right? It's like kind of the poker mentality, right? It's good for your image as a player, that people know that you're willing to try crazy stuff. And it might, in other games in the future, maybe it allows me to get away with stuff because people have to worry about like some unlikely build that might punish something a certain way, and maybe they end up being less greedy, or they try to account for the possibility of that, and then I don't do it, and then I end up getting just kind of an edge for free because I've shown that I'm capable of doing stuff like that. So anyway, so all that's kind of going into it. So we talked about the two things that can happen. One, I punish him. Two, he punishes me. The third one is that nothing can happen, actually. So there's definitely some chances for nothing to happen, especially any sort of like weak side recon or strong side recon to the corner here. If that ends up happening, or if like the recon goes in this forest, which is something you can do as well. Any sort of recon openers that don't like exactly go to the middle end up kind of being nothing. The worst case scenario for me would be, other than this artillery getting popped, would be some sort of early recon play, especially to this side, combined with like an early capture attempt on this city, because I'm not going to be able to get to this city for a long time because I sent my first infantry from this base to get income rather than try to push towards the contested properties. And I'm also, by having all my vehicles here, I'm absolutely unable to contest this. So even like a normal timed capture on this city is going to get through and be uncontested. And likewise, I don't really have a way to defend this capture. So if recons show up here and deny this for me, then he's going to end up with 1 contested property, and I'm going to end up with 0, and it's not going to be great. So that's the opener. Seems pretty complicated. There's one final bit of this opener that we need to talk about, and that is that I have 9,000 funds this turn, and really this is the turn that I need to have all the money for, because I need to be able to buy a tank this turn. And so if I didn't have the capture order just so, I would not be able to have 9,000 on this turn. And this is also kind of my fallback plan in case I get a recon showing up to hit the artillery, because I've got a tank now. So next turn it's going to be here. Next turn I would basically be blocking the artillery in, and then the tank shows up and basically can finish off the recon at least. Ideally, turn it into a trade instead of just me losing like half of my first vehicle for nothing. So, all right. After all that, we're through to day 6 now. So that is what happens. Day 7 happens, and now I get to see if my gambit has paid off. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy, happy day. I felt so good. You just know how mad he had to feel driving his tank and seeing the freaking artillery there. I laughed so hard when I saw it there, because it's just like, it feels good when you kind of own somebody's soul, and it's like, yeah, I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to do that so much that I did something absolutely crazy because I knew you were going to do that, and you did it. And now you have to stare at this artillery and there's nothing you can do about it. And this is a huge deal. It's really a massive impact on the RPS, because as soon as this happens, I win the center. I may not be able to convert the center right away, but my opponent cannot put any pressure on me to capture these center cities, because I'm up, like, I get a roll to take this tank down to 4, which I get for a change. It's a favorable roll, I think. It's like 60 or something like that, but I get it. And so tank down to 4, and I mean, I've got 29k of unit income on the field, and I just did like 4,000. So that's like a really, really huge blow to in terms of just like fighting power. And so now I can just chain stuff to the middle, and I'm always going to be stronger for a while. It's not game ending though, because he is Andy, and so just like if my artillery had gotten popped and knocked down to 4 by a recon or something, this tank can run away, and eventually Andy's going to get super, and he's going to bounce back up to 9. But it's all about the tempo, because if this turns into me putting pressure on the center cities or converting into the center cities, this is going to turn into an income lead right away. And I know that I'm totally safe. I can just send stuff mid, and I'm going to be stronger. It makes the game incredibly simple for me. And you've seen in some of these games that I've played over the past year or so that, or like the last video that I released, that the early game does not always go that great for me. So it feels really good when the early game goes exactly according to plan, and I get to go into like the late early game, early mid game with everything the way I want it, with an advantage secured already, and then I just get to play around consolidating that advantage. That's a real happy feeling. So anyway, let's move on. So we get some more captures happening, and we just get to go mid. And we see what's going on. So as we expected, we expect there to be another tank behind this, because this is what he's done in the other replays. He's basically tank chained to the mid, but there is no risk of any of these cities falling into his hands because there are no tanks now to support this. So I'm going to be doing whatever I feel like. And actually, instead of taking this guy, I could have captured this, but I'm feeling pretty frisky right now. I'm thinking maybe there's a chance that I can end up sneaking this property. It's a little bit delayed, but I'm feeling pretty strong on the, I'm strong on the board. I just am. So maybe there's a chance that he's going to feel the need to try and deny the center, and then won't have vision of the sides in time, and I can get that capture. So I'm going to go for that, and I'm just going to delay this city a turn, and we'll get it next turn with this infantry instead. And then we're just going to be building tanks, because if we send tanks to the middle, we're going to have more stuff. Infantry goes onto the mountain. See a bunch of infantry go mid. Tank retreats. And all's well that has ended well. So now it's really just a matter of consolidation. Now, it doesn't end the game, but we've got this artillery, and the artillery is very, very good on this map in general. You don't always have to get it first, like I've done here, but this is a concept that is going to be incredibly important for the next couple of turns. And you need, this is kind of it's a little bit of an advanced concept, but this is really important because the 2 vehicle line is right on these cities. Any sort of overextension beyond this line is basically dangerous / liable to get punished, because the second you step over this line, not only are you basically minus 1 turn's income worth of vehicles. Once you're in 3 vehicle reinforced range, you're fighting with like 2 less tanks every turn, essentially, for whatever's there. So not only is it that, but then you're also activating your opponent's 2-turn tank reinforcements. So you're like down. Eventually, it's going to be like you're down 18k income in army value, and then you're also kind of giving your opponent 18k in army value extra to fight with if you're overextending across this line. So it's a little bit more complicated than that when you start factoring in the airport and things like that. But that's the idea, right? So it's like crossing the line is very bad. But when you have artillery allows me to sit behind the line, like here or here, and force my opponent to have to cross that line to get rid of it. And even if the artillery dies, as long as it requires a sufficient commitment to be able to get to it, then whatever's crossing that line is basically sacrificing its life. And if it's like 2 tanks or a tank and a recon that have to cross this line to get rid of the artillery, well, would you trade an artillery for a tank and a recon? Like, of course, like that's almost double the value that you're getting just by having the artillery there. You need to keep the artillery in the correct position, though. Like we can't extend the artillery to be like behind the city or anything like that. Like we got to stay behind the line and kind of magnet all the units behind that 2 vehicle move threshold to basically force them to overextend. And then once we have artillery in position, all we need to do is just put infantry on the cities. And it forces our opponent into a really difficult dilemma now that we've got the vehicle advantage, because they're either going to have to bring vehicles and fight into our better terrain and also our artillery that's already in position, which is going to usually lead to good things for us, or they're going to have to send infantry in to delay or deny captures. But generally, you're sending 2 infantry in to deny 1 capture, and you can't do that forever. You can't trade 2 infantry for 1 infantry forever. That's going to lead to bad things down the road. So that is now that the initial engagement has kind of gone off, that is where we're going to be going next. We want to be setting up to kind of siege down these initial cities. We don't need to go crazy and just like attack stuff on the mountains, by the way, because we don't want this recon to be sitting on these roads, because recons on roads are going to get one shot. That's really dumb. We don't want to do that. And frankly, infantry on cities are not necessarily safe either, because the second the 2 comm towers get capped, your infantry are not really safe on cities. It's just a numbers game. So you can't really overestimate the power of the defensive terrain, but we want to put pressure on here, and especially I want to put pressure on the mountain. I don't want him to be able to sit in infantry on there. And the nice thing about the artillery is that if I put the artillery here on this grass, then not only I'm still behind the line, but I'm also denying the vision. And if my opponent is going very heavy on tanks, which, I mean, we've already seen 1 tank, we got to imagine that there's another floating around somewhere. My opponent doesn't have recons, then you really need that mountain. Otherwise, you just can't see what your opponent is doing. So the artillery is very, very good for that. And that's going to also make my opponent want to dive in on the artillery, because it's denying so much vision, but then diving in on the artillery is, potentially leading to very profitable trades for me. So we're providing our opponent a lot of bad options and letting them figure it out. But for now, we put this infantry onto the mountain. We see that this city is uncapped. That is a very happy thing to see because we didn't get punished over here. And now I'm just going to be going for... So this guy is here to see if this gets capped next turn, this guy's going to deny. If it doesn't get capped next turn, this guy's actually going to go here. I'm just going to get all these cities. And I'll rely on the recon to basically deny this going forward. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. We have the opportunity to play denial and also still kind of have optimal efficiency in our captures if we get the opportunity to do so. And then we're going to be going for this city. We prepare for that last turn. We're going to put some pressure on this city here. And then we send the tank in here. And we can get away with this because we already took the tank down to half health. And so if my opponent is just running away with the tank, then there's a 4 HP tank chilling out there that's not really going to be able to accomplish much. And I'm tank chaining as well. So any engagement that starts here, this actually is, because of this mountain, this square is actually kind of behind the 2-turn line of engagement. So this position is super, super safe. There's no way this artillery is getting touched. We're going to try to instigate infantry trading on here, where we want to pull this guy in here, like so. And especially if we can get this guy to come over, then weak side infantry on this map are very, very limited. And so we're pulling weak side infantry into the fight in a trade that's good for us. And one way to deny this city long term is just kill all the weak side infantry. And if we're pulling infantry towards the center, then that's working towards that goal. So pretty much only good things can happen here. The one downside is that this artillery is not actually covering this capture. But in my opinion, it's actually more important to deny the mountain vision than it is to deny the city, because we know this capture is not going to get through. But we want to use this as a way to basically instigate a trade to thin out the infantry numbers and turn our absolute dominance of the center into a more tangible advantage going forward. So tanks to the center. Again, tanks can reach all the way to the city. So that's why we're going for this city, by the way, and not this city. That's a really important point. So tank from this base can get onto this city and cover this infantry in 2 moves. Here, it's 3 moves. So that's why we went for the city that we're going for. If he contests, we bring an extra tank to the fight. And there's no way he's going to be able to match my number of tanks. And then anti-air turn, anti-air recon. 14k is kind of awkward income-wise, but is what it is. So we see a recon show up and interrupt this. So that's, I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's worth a shot. And we see another recon, so looks like there was a double recon turn 2 turns ago, which is fine, but we've got good vision, so we know what's going on. And then we see infantry go in, is what we expected, and does not get the lucky roll, which I think is like it's a 33% chance to kill, roughly. So we win that roll as we deserve to, and that means that our infantry lives, and as Andy, as our partner, CO, having 1 HP infantry live is very, very good, because if we just keep that infantry in the back long enough, eventually he will turn into a full infantry much more quickly than a 1 HP infantry would with other COs. Additionally, 1 HP infantry is very, very good for seeing into forests, very, very good for sitting on mountains. So that's a very, very good start. And we force the infantry off the mountain, so now we've got some good vision denial. And we see a 6 HP tank move off the city, so that means that he is repairing that tank, which is kind of good for us. If that tank kind of sits around in the back and just kind of stays at 4 HP for a long time, then eventually the Super Power is going to undo the damage that we did. Obviously, it's going to take a while, but my opponent is repairing it, which means that he's going to have more fighting power sooner, but that damage is now impacting his income. So that is now like permanent damage that we've done with the artillery. So It's actually, we're happy to see that. Now it's my turn. Can't really do anything about the recon down here, but that's okay. It was always kind of a speculative capture, but at least the infantry stays alive. And again, 5 HP infantry as Andy, annoying with other COs, as Andy just means he gets put in timeout until he gets to get his free HP back. So going to be finishing up our captures, move the 1 HP guy into the forest. We clear off these 2 infantry. Back him off. We'll finish off some captures. And we're just going mid because we've got more stuff mid with that tank damage. So we know if we send everything to the middle, we're always going to be a little bit stronger. And with the artillery as well, sitting in there, we are making life miserable. And we get kind of frisky here. This is like mega obnoxious to deal with because just like last turn, I said this tile here is still in the 3 tank move reinforcement range. So it feels like it's really vulnerable, like you're putting the tank on the road, but actually this is still in kind of the happy area. And this then denies this square, which is super obnoxious. And now it's covering both of these tiles. So if this artillery is allowed to stay here, then I'm going to be able to start capturing these cities, and my opponent is going to have to basically feed units into artillery range in order to contest that, which is going to be a problem for them. So this is what center control gives you. Like the fact that we won the rock, paper, scissors at the beginning allows me to do very, very frisky moves like this and not be afraid. If that hadn't happened, putting these tanks on the cities is a little bit dangerous because all it takes is like 2 tanks, especially if you've got the 2 towers, like 2 tanks is going to clear this guy. And then you've got access to the artillery and you're not really safe. But I know I've got more stuff. So I know that there's no way that he's going to be able to dive in and try to punish this with my tanks where they are. So feeling very safe. And again, we're not, just because we got this early advantage doesn't mean we get to kind of YOLO dive everywhere. We just need to be patient, push our objectives. We just got 2 infantry for free this turn. So we're up 2 kills to 0. It's a good start. We're going to keep pushing that advantage. And now it's time for our first air unit. Kind of got a lot of recons going, but 3 is a good number. So retreating a lot, pretty passive play. We've got good vision over here. So the reason this recon is here is to see if anything goes this way, because we've got all of our infantry here. They're not really ready to contest this property right now, because they need to finish their captures. But next turn, this guy will be done. And so then if any further capture attempts happen next turn, like this guy's going to be ready to interrupt it. But by having this vision here, we can kind of get a decent idea of, it's pretty unlikely that something came outside of our vision to land on this city, to need us to contest it. More likely it would have come from like the mountain, and then we would have seen it. Okay, so not a whole lot happening here. Actually, before we continue on this train of thought anymore, I want to call something out that I think is actually very important. I've been playing as Jess all the way up to this point. And so my opponent actually has been playing as Andy. And in terms of day-to-day, Andy and Adder are identical because neither of them have any sort of day-to-day power. But it does matter a lot because your primary CO is going to get double the charge that your secondary CO gets. And I think this is actually a big mistake. I think that you need to be playing as Adder in the early game because you want to get to that fast CO power threshold where you can get +1 on your movement, especially on your infantry, and then on your tanks as well. Like if you want to contest the center, you want to basically be getting to that threshold as quickly as possible so that you can clear tanks off of both of those center cities and maybe land stuff on there. And the second that threshold is met, I have to basically play a little bit more passively because I have to worry about my infantry getting kind of overrun by adder infantry that can kind of sit out of range and then dive in and clear all my stuff out with the power of 2 towers, and then becomes a problem for me to potentially counterattack, or there ends up being like a strong wall of infantry that my vehicles have to clear, but then I can't do enough damage to adder's vehicles because I get unit count problems and things like that. But holding adder in reserve, this changes the timing, and so now it's Jess against Andy, and assuming that the charge continues to increase at roughly the same rate, well, Jess is going to have the first timing in terms of power spikes from CO, because Jess is going to potentially have a turbocharge available far earlier than Andy is going to end up having the hyper repair superpower available, because it's 3 bars versus 6 bars. So I expected the dynamic for this matchup to be, okay, Adder's going to hit a power spike, and then Jess is going to counterattack, and then the Andys are going to go fight. But that's not what actually happened in practice, and it's in addition to just being really behind in terms of army power on the board because of the RPS at the beginning. Additionally, now I'm hitting the first power spike as well, so that's probably something that shouldn't be happening, but it's working in my favor, and it's worth pointing out. Just because you have a tier 3 CO and then the tier 4 CO is the reserve CO doesn't mean you're obligated to play the tier 3 CO as kind of your primary CO. You kind of need to have them work together in service of kind of the pace of the game and what your objectives are, and kind of hitting the right timing to utilize them well. And I do think that the tier 3 and tier 4 COs have like a lot of synergy. Like I think there's a lot good for the kind of the, I guess, meta game or just into the strategy. Like there's unique synergy, unique mechanics because of the tags, where you're doing stuff that you wouldn't necessarily find intuitive otherwise, and you can't just blindly rely on your tier 3 CO just because the number's higher or lower, I guess. Anyway, enough of that. Let's continue. So we got the second tower now, so we are pretty good, and we can be very aggressive with the recon, and we can drive into this forest and not care at all because we have more stuff. And so it's going to be very hard for our opponent to remove this recon. That would definitely require 2 vehicles and an infantry spotter somewhere, and if that kind of commitment happens, then the counterattack is going to be pretty devastating. So no fear at all. We're just going to leverage our vision. And we send the 1 HP guy over because this square still allows me to send him back to a city next turn. But I just wanted to be like 100% sure that nothing was capturing the city, even though I thought it was pretty unlikely. If there was something, I would actually pull this guy off. That's why I waited to capture with him. Because I'd really rather this recon kind of stay with the force. Like I could kind of peel him off, and that's why the 1 HP guy had to go instead of the recon. Because if we see something here, then okay, we can send the recon here and the infantry here and kind of clear it off. And we see enough stuff down here that we know that's likely to be uncontested. But anyway, plans for a scenario that never materialized. So whatever. So here's me repairing our stuff. And I know that this guy could repair to 5 with the Andy Super, but that's going to be a ways off. And repairing infantry when you've got time is almost always going to be cost effective. So there's no reason not to just leave him on the city. And we're going to be shifting here. We can't really maintain this position that much longer, because now that both of the towers are going to be online for both of us, these cities don't really protect us. And I don't want to get caught. So what I want to do is I want to kind of roll down this way, because I think that I'm pretty strong. Like, we've got this copter coming, so it's a very natural place for me to kind of pivot towards. And I see all the stuff down here, but pivoting towards here it sends me far away from this airport, and it sends me far away from this base. And sure, like this base is going to still have like 2-turn reinforced over here, but this base fighting over here and especially over here, this is 3 vehicle move reinforced for here, and for a lot of tiles, it's 2 copter moves, or potentially it could be like a 3rd copter move. 1. Yeah, so here's like the 2 copter move line, right? So anything in this area is going to be 3 copter moves. And so this is going to stretch my opponent further. And now we're like, okay, I've got the artillery here. I'm going to capture this, and I'm going to put pressure on this. And I ought to have enough stuff that if I can trigger a fight, then it should be good for me. And ultimately, I kind of want to force... Like, this artillery is just really causing problems, because as soon as you start capturing stuff, you basically are forcing the opponent to come into artillery range. And it's right behind this forest with a recon, so you need a lot of unit count to clear that out. And it's just... Things are... The pressure is escalating. I will say that my opponent has done actually a very good job so far. It's been like 3 days. My opponent is playing from a disadvantage from the early game, and yet none of these 4 tiles are captured. All the cities are still neutral. So I have not been able to secure an income advantage despite having a pretty good board position. And my opponent hasn't really had to sacrifice that much. I mean, I killed 2 infantry, but 2 of my infantry took damage as well, so it's not like a huge difference. And my opponent has managed to repair this tank back up. So as more and more units get on the board, like 4,000 income damage to a tank is really, really meaningful on day 7. By the time you get to day 12, it's not that huge. So my opponent is doing the right thing, just trying to draw the game out, delaying any sort of fighting as much as possible, keeping the cities neutral until the forces build up to the point where the results of the early RPS are less relevant. And that's exactly the right thing to do. So my opponent's doing a great job. But nonetheless, I'm going to be ramping up the pressure now. I'm going to put the recon on this city because we know that there was a infantry in this forest. We saw that. So just going to prevent any sneaky captures of that city. And obviously if something dies on this recon, then this is a 2-turn reinforced from this base. So that's going to be pretty unappealing for our opponent. So additionally, this guy can also kind of flex over to here if we need to, although it seems pretty unlikely since we finished these caps up here. These guys are going to be ready now. And going forward, like any caps here, we should be able to contest that with just infantry. Now we got an anti-air, we got a copter, so now it's time for more tanks. We see the recon move up, so opponent doing a good job just keeping eyes on the artillery at all times, not getting further behind. Sends in an infantry to deny that. See a recon in the forest. See an anti-air show up, so that's kind of nice. I mean, it's not shocking at all. I have an anti-air too, but it's nice to see where it is. So it's just the benefit. Like we've had way better vision this whole game because we are able to put recons in the center and our opponent's not, and then we've denied the mountains. So feeling very comfortable. And this is kind of an interesting turn here. There's a lot of stuff kind of sneaking towards the mountains, and my opponent is managing to stall this out, but if things continue, like, I'm not going to be able to get this city. Like, my opponent can trade, like, basically 2 for 1 for a while, and I'm going to have this city denied. So I don't love that. And I see the anti-air, and the anti-air here is like, man, like, I'm in position here. I'm in position. Like, I've got a copter, can go on this tank, potentially clear off the tank, and then I've got another tank that could end up on the city and hit the anti-air. Like, we could dive here. Diving could be a thing. So I'm thinking about it. It's a little bit early to dive deep. And if we hadn't had this early game advantage, it would be unthinkable, and it is not a thing you can do. But I'm thinking about it because I'm annoyed that I haven't been able to secure any sort of income advantage based on my early lead, and it's kind of stalling out, and things are the balance of power is kind of going back towards the center. Obviously, I'm still a little bit favored, but I was hoping to convert this advantage into something a little bit more meaningful. So we're going to give this a shot, and we're just going to take a little peek. Aha. Okay. So we trade out for an infantry. That's good. The downside is this recon is on a road, and that recon's going to just die in one hit. I don't love that. He's probably going away for free, and obviously the 6 HP infantry on the mountain certainly is going away for free. That being said, we see what we need to see, and we see that everything is in position. There's nothing like trying to flex up here. This is everything, right? And so now it's pretty obvious that if I send this, especially seeing the second anti-air, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this was built from the base last turn. So we knew that getting on this mountain is going to let us see this tile, and that's why, like, if you let your opponent get your mountain, it's like, this is bad news. Like, that is the value of the center control, is you can basically see their reinforcements way earlier than you would normally. So we see the reinforcements here, and we see this comp, and we're like, okay, if I dive on the anti-air, which I have the ability to do, like this guy can come down here, and the copter can get involved, and then the tank can end up on the city and hit the anti-air. If I do that, then my copter is going to die because there's a second anti-air. And then my tanks are going to get smacked by the copter. And ultimately, then I'm going to be fighting in an overextended position. And maybe I'll get like an okay trade, but I can't like keep fighting there. Like you can't necessarily look at the opportunity that's available to us here and say like, oh, it's really good for me this turn because I'm going to get first strike on a bunch of vehicles. Like, yeah, that's true. But then what happens like the next turn? Like, you're going to get popped, and then you have to choose to either keep fighting or retreat. And if you keep fighting, then you're going to continue overextending beyond your reinforcements, and you're basically throwing away the army advantage that you fought so hard to secure so far. So, unfortunately, I see this. I don't like what I see. We are not going to be diving in. And my recon is kind of forfeit because of that. So this is actually a nice play by my opponent. I kind of got outplayed here a little bit. And if this recon dies, then we're kind of back on equal footing. Like, I've not had an income lead. The damage I did to the tank is about 4k if I lose the recon. Like, it's kind of equalized, and we're going to be losing 2 units here for 1. We'll get this guy as well. So it's possible that we could be transitioning back into a pretty even game based on this, but I'm not going to make it that easy for him. So first of all, let's do some cleanup here. I'm going to trade into this infantry here, and that is pretty annoying because that was like an 85% chance to kill. But I mean, it's me, so we're going to get one of these every game. But in this situation, I knew that based on where this turn was going, that that roll was actually not a meaningful roll. If I got the roll, I would basically be capturing the city with this infantry. But if you see how I'm setting up here, okay, let's get through this turn, and then I'll talk about the positioning that we're setting up here. Okay. So even if this guy's capturing the city, what I'm doing here is I've created this big wall with these infantry, and these infantry are, frankly, they are slightly overextended. They're past the line that I want them to be. I don't love that. But I have the artillery, and the artillery is 1 square beyond the 2-turn reinforcement line. So even though my infantry are overextended, having this artillery here is still covering them, and also if my opponent wants to dive on this artillery, he's going to have to cross the line that he doesn't want to cross. He's going to have to cross it with 2 vehicles to just remove this artillery. And then every single other vehicle that I have is chilling behind, waiting for a counterattack. And I've reinforced this way so that all these guys are covering the artillery. So I didn't send this guy around here. We're protecting ourselves against a dive on the artillery by going this way. So if he dives on the artillery, I'm going to have like my full extra turn of reinforcements contributing to the fight. If he doesn't dive on the artillery, then I get to counterattack with the artillery on whatever tries to clear my infantry. Or ideally, he just leaves all the infantry alone, and then I get to retreat for free. So that is what we're setting up, and we're going to lose the recon, and it is what it is. So we're trying to set up kind of a no-win situation for our opponent, and then we put pressure on this city where we say, like, okay, if you don't do anything, I am going to just continue whittling away at these cities. And this is a pretty tough part of the map to contest for my opponent, because these 2 unit deploying tiles, this is 3 moves away. So very close to our airport, we're getting value out of this base as well. So like all 3 of these guys are kind of all coming together. So it's pretty advantageous for me to put pressure like this. And then finally on the positioning, all of our other vehicles are just really far back, because the one thing we don't want to have happen is start off a big engagement here, which I think is pretty likely to set off. Start this big engagement, and then we give free tank hits on valuable vehicles. So we're not going to like try and add vehicles to the wall. The wall is just infantry, just the cheapest stuff we've got, and then the vehicles are always going to stay back and they're going to counterattack. So that is the plan. Let's see what our opponent does with this dilemma that we have presented them with. Okay, so Copter gets pulled over here. This is actually not the worst. I mean, we can't counterattack it, but it's not terrible. We do lose the infantry. Recon gets popped as we expected, and okay, here we go. So this infantry dies, so the roll didn't matter. Even if we had been able to capture the city, it would have died anyway. So we can forgive the RNG gods this time. An anti-air comes in, clears off the infantry, recon, tank, and the artillery is dead. And our wall gets smashed pretty hard here. And I mean, that feels pretty bad, right? But the reality is, how much damage did we really take there? Let's take a look. So we're looking at, we've taken 16K, and we've killed 8.6K. So we're down about 8K in damage done, but obviously we're going to have a really big counterattack this turn. Another important thing is, you see, this is the value of that infantry coming down and capture here. This copter is now isolated from this gigantic push. So there's one less unit fighting as part of this death ball than there would have been otherwise. And additionally, now the fight, where is the fight happening? The fight is happening along this line right here. Look at all this stuff is happening, and these guys are kind of overextended across this line here, and that isolates this base especially, because this base, this is 3 tank moves from this base. But this area is 2 tank moves from both of these bases. So if like a multi-turn fight breaks out here, this position is favoring me, and this is the whole point of why I rolled this direction a couple of turns ago, because I wanted to set something like this up. Because this is the side that I want to fight on. If we're fighting here instead, then the same is true for my opponent, but we're fighting here. So now we get to show some Jess power here. We clear that guy off. We take some hits on the anti-air, and we're getting to use these 2 tanks, and we're getting to activate them because all the fighting is happening on our side of the map. Now here is where I actually make a small mistake here. The reason why I'm turbocharging now is because I need this recon to die in 1 hit, and without the power, there's a 90% chance that it will die in 1 hit. But that 10% chance is just trolling me a little bit, and I'm like, I was planning on turbocharging anyway, but I really just want to do it now. And the mistake that I didn't realize, but I didn't plan this turn carefully enough. This recon actually had chip on it. It had chip on it from a while back, but I could have known that this recon, I believe, is actually the recon that interrupted this earlier. And so actually it was guaranteed. And so no matter what, if I'm going to power or not, like, because it's guaranteed, I should always kill it before I use the power just to accumulate more charge. Because now that I've burned the power, I'm not getting any charge from this. But so that's, and then actually, if I had known that, I also would have sequenced this differently, because I think I basically, a better version of this move involves, well, I'll show you in a second. So this happens, and the anti-air comes in to clear off the anti-air. So a better version of this move involves these 2 positions being switched, where the anti-air is to the left of the city here, and the tank is on top. And if I had known about the chip damage, I would have had this tile clear so that I could have put the tank there. But I did it this way because I thought I needed the charge. So I kind of had some suboptimal. So it is a little bit of minor jank to this turn. I missed out on a couple K in charge. So have hope, all you Advanced Wars players. It can happen to the best of us, I guess, because this was a little bit botched compared to what it should have been. But regardless, the point of the turbocharge is actually not that I needed any of that to clear all this stuff off. It's to give my recons 1-hit kills on infantry on roads, of which there are 2. And this is kind of a nitty turbocharge, but the reality is that this is tags. So you're going to get more powers. And so if there's value in burning a power now, it is actually kind of worth it, even for something pretty small, because we're going to be swapping to Andy, and we're then going to start building charge as Andy as well. And Jess is kind of outlived her usefulness now. This is pretty good in terms of the amount of damage that we're getting here. So now we're up 10-6. And now we're up like 16K. So we were down like 8K, and now we've flipped around. So we're up pretty substantially. But yeah, I mean, I don't love how exposed this anti-air is. Like, it's not great. And this is the exact situation of why my opponent needed to be playing as Adder instead of Andy. Because if this was Adder, I would have to potentially worry about a superpower. And if the superpower goes off as Adder, actually all this stuff is still in 2 vehicle moves. And so the positioning actually doesn't favor me. But because I know he's Andy, and even now it's like he's about 12K away from superpower, it's not super easy to exploit this positioning. This stuff is all kind of still pretty safe. It's still pretty isolated. And if my opponent can't continue fighting, I'm going to end up like 16K ahead in terms of the damage that I've done so far. So it's very fortunate for me. So you can see there's some small things that are kind of compounding themselves into major things. And we can trade here on the I guess technically the strong side, but kind of our weak side. Actually, we've kind of decided that that is going to be our secondary front. But and then we're at 18K, so the classic 18K buy is just going to be copter, tank, infantry. And this is a pretty well diversified force here. Got a lot of tanks. It feels pretty good. And the one scary thing is we see a lot of stuff here. There is a world where you basically send like maybe like a tank and a recon into this guy, or maybe two tanks into this guy, and then anti-air into anti-air, and then tank into anti-air. And then if you have a copter coming, then the copter can basically smash into my copter and end up with superpower, essentially. In which case, the fight can kind of continue. Like I don't think my opponent is ever going to come out of this sequence of trades like ahead, but I could get smacked pretty decently if the reinforcements kind of align in a perfect way for my opponent. But it kind of depends on what they've deployed. And so infantry comes up here, tank comes in here. We get some infantry trading. And then copter hits the recon. Oh, and by the way, I swapped. So I'm Andy, so this power is not real. This power is not actually active. This is just a replay viewer bug. So I'm getting charged for all this. And we have a disengage. So that now finally we have managed to convert on our early game advantage. That we won the rock paper scissors. We got like this positioning advantage in the center. We got a little bit ahead on infantry. We rotated, and then finally we managed to instigate a fight in a position favorable to us, and our opponent was not able to continue fighting based on the deploy decisions or whatever, mistakes, however you want to spin it. Now we're substantially ahead. And the reality is that this attack and this attack into my recon and tank, they just don't matter. Because now charge is building up fast enough that superpower is going to be online in like a turn or two. Probably more like 2 or 3 turns. But there's enough stuff on the map that I don't need to repair this guy. I'll repair him up to 6. And then just leave him. I'm not going to repair this recon. He's going to heal back up to free. All those attacks did was give me charge. And they put those units in timeout for 2 turns, but then they're going to be back at full strength. So now we're quite strong. So we're just going to try and trade into these infantry as best we can to delay having to defend this capture or to defend this property, because we got nothing to over here. So we just, like, the fact that this infantry is at 9 is amazing, because that means we don't need to defend this. So we're just trying to keep these guys alive, and they're all hurt, but if they get the chance to run away, then superpower is going to go off, and all of a sudden I'm going to have a lot of pretty strong infantry over there. So that's Andy for you. That's kind of how you want to make it happen. And now we build another artillery. We need another artillery again, because our first artillery died. And it's kind of just like rinse and repeat. Like, we don't need to go crazy. We actually don't want to engage here. Like, now that Andy power is up, it's our time to chill. Like, we just got a big victory in battle. Opponent disengaged. We don't need to chase. Chasing is throwing. Stay behind our line. Big chillin'. So we just disengage, and we're going to rotate a little bit. But really, we're just kind of consolidating center. And now there's no way our opponent can extend into this. Like when all is said and done, like I'm still 12k up in damage that I've done, but critically, there's a lot of damage units here that are going to just benefit from the superpower. So it's the damage doesn't even tell the whole story. It's actually even better for me than the 12k lead in terms of army value. No income lead though, but still very strong position for me. So we get some more infantry trading. See anti-air, and because we've got like the center vision, it's very obvious what is happening, right? Like there's a big rotation heading over to this way. So I think my opponent probably wants to try and instigate a fight like in this area. But I mean, we're never going to be overextending that far. We don't need to. So what if he's sending everything over here? I'm just going to roll right back this way, and we're just going to resume the plan of putting a lot of pressure on these two tiles. We can't quite do it this turn because we really need this artillery to be in position. Once the artillery is in position, that's our sign to go. So this turn is kind of a prep turn where we just want to stall for another turn. And actually what we're going to do here, I don't know exactly when we do this in this turn, is we're going to send these to infantry and we're actually going to take this guy out. The reason we're going to do that is so on its face, we're taking a 1 for 2, which is not a good trade. But by removing this guy, we kind of have vision of all the other stuff. I don't think that there's another infantry that is going to be able to get onto the city. Because if we roll this way, we're basically kind of giving up the city for free, at least temporarily. So I want to kind of retreat these guys and delay captures of the city for about 2 turns. If I delay it 2 turns, then I'm likely to get superpower off, and then all these crappy infantry become regular infantry, and then I can just deny this forever. But I need to buy time, so we're going to kind of use our army, our unit count lead to do a sacrifice just to delay this 1 extra turn. I don't know when that trade happens, but it happens now. Okay, so we burn the 8 and the 7, and then we retreat the other guy. And then we're just going to rotate over here and set up the siege on these 2 properties. Recons, when you have the army value, just like putting recons on these cities is just like super obnoxious because you can't really initiate into that. So he's just like totally safe. And I've been able to have recons on these cities basically the whole game. Yeah, so not a whole lot happened there, but we're setting up for next turn. So now moving on to this turn, it's kind of an interesting situation because my opponent's got charge basically all the way filled up, but you would think that this would be a good thing for my opponent. It's kind of a curse in many ways because with Andy's superpower is closer to, I would say, like Eagle's superpower more than it is like Kindle's superpower in the sense that Andy's superpower, you kind of want to just reach the threshold kind of after all the attacking has been done in your turn, and you can pop it at the end of your turn, or at least after a lot of the fighting's been done, and that's really how you get the most value out of it. Just like with Eagle, as long as you get enough charge by the end of your turn, you're going to be able to activate like Lightning Strike and get the full value. But with other kind of fighting powers, like Kindle Super especially, like you really want to have the supercharge before you start fighting so that you can kind of have it for all your attacks. But when the meter's already all the way full, and your opponent, like the problem for my opponent here is everything is like clustered in this area. But what Andy wants to do is Andy wants to send everything in and basically trade on all the vehicles. And then once the trading is all done, then you pop the power. And then all the chip damage that you've taken along the way just gets healed up. and then use the extra movement maybe to trade infantry as much as you can, because the movement's going to matter a lot more. It's kind of the synergy of Andy's power is kind of awkward, because it's like you get the extra movement, but you kind of don't want the movement. You want the healing, and by the time you're getting the value from the healing, you've already moved most of your stuff, and so you can't take advantage of the extra movement anymore. So it's not necessarily bad. It's just awkward, and it's a little bit tough to utilize correctly. So because my opponent is so far back, like if you look at where I position everything, I'm just like solidly, I mean even like an extra square behind that center line. So any sort of big yeet is going to take him pretty solidly into my territory, and there's not a whole lot of vehicles that are accessible, so you can't really like efficiently take advantage of healing your chip damage if you can't even reach the vehicles. So even though Andy's like got the power meter full, like you can't really use the power. You need to. It's especially good as like a counterattack power. Like that's really what you want to be able to use it. Like stuff needs to be in range already, but I'm not going in range. I'm staying very far back on my side, so it's not very very powerful. And this is why I'm kind of harping on this a little bit. But this is why it would have been better to have Adder earlier on in the game, because then you're kind of you initiate the fight with Adder, and then you switch to Andy, and then as the fight's going on, then you can drop this big super in the middle of the fight, and the charge dynamics work out pretty nicely. Anyway, let's see what he does. You lose that infantry. This guy gets plunked, which is okay, because he's actually going to survive. He's not going to get attacked again, which is pretty surprising. So we see a tank show up there, but we see like nothing else. And because like our vision is so good, like got this recon on here, we know that there's like nothing over here. It's just all here, right? Because if anything moved, we would see it 100%. So now artillery is finally going to be in position. It is now time to start inching forward towards the fight. And so now what we are going to do is we are going to initiate. And we are going to initiate with minimal force possible. Because we know that if we send everything in here, then we're giving my opponent what he wants, which is an army that's already extended into him, where he can use the superpower and then heal a lot of chip. It's very efficient. So we're just going to be clearing off the vision, and we killed all the recons earlier. So now the mountain vision is gone, and we haven't committed very much. We committed one tank and one recon, and they are for sure not going to be surviving past this turn, more than likely. But that's okay, because as long as we don't commit more than that, it's still not going to be very pleasant for our opponent to superpower into. And by the way, now the charge is maxed, so every turn that they're holding on to that superpower, I'm catching up in charge. Right, I'm benefiting, not my opponent. It seems counterintuitive, but actually, like the fact that my charge bar is not full actually makes it more efficient for me and not for my opponent. And then we just put the pressure on. We say, okay, I'm gonna get these 2 cities because I know you're over here, and if you're over here, like how are you gonna contest that? And we just build a little wall here with our infantry. We kind of shuffle these guys because we know that once we pop power, these guys are going to be full strength again, so we just want to keep them away and don't let them get picked off. And then we're going to shift to the corner. It's the same thing we did, it was like 8 turns ago or 7 turns ago, because we know that like this is a good place for us to fight. And now, since we killed the vision on this mountain, now the artillery is in position. So if he puts the infantry back on the mountain, oops, now you're in artillery range. And what I'm hoping is going to happen is that something's going to come in to kill this tank, right? Whether it be like a copter or other tank or something like that. And then it's going to realize, oh, I'm actually in artillery range. And then that is going to trigger a big attack. But it's going to trigger a big attack into all this stuff on the front. Look at all this stuff. It's just infantry. It's infantry and 1 artillery. You know, and we're teching to a Neo tank, by the way. I'd saved for that last turn. And so this is my line of junk that is ready to sacrifice their lives for the greater good. The artillery is the bait, and everything else is solidly out of range. And we know that because we know everything's back here. And if my opponent doesn't attack, then we're going to get these cities. So it's a no-win situation for them. And comes in, recon dies, which is fine. That was always going to happen. It turns out there's a hidden infantry in the woods over there, which is kind of annoying. But okay, we see anti-air come in, but the anti-air is killing an infantry. That's fine. Copter comes in, sees the artillery. That's kind of fine. And then this guy gets chipped down, but not dead. And we see a bunch of stuff start to shift over. But no big attack happens here. And that's it. And now look at the charge. So I am 15k away from my own super. And now I'm thinking getting my own super is very lucrative right now. So I for sure I have more stuff because I've been winning the fights over the whole game. So I'm like, you know, moderately ahead on army material. But if I get the super this turn, then these guys repair to full and I get both of these cities as well. So that's pretty lucrative. Just locking down those two cities is probably a decisive advantage in the long run. I just need to be able to get 15k of charge. And the nice thing is we are Andy, and Andy anti-airs are incredibly versatile at getting charge because you can do things like send anti-airs into tanks as your first hit. And the tank will counterattack your anti-air down to 5. But if that gives you enough charge to hit your hyper repair, then that's not a problem because it's going right back up to 10. And that's like, you know, 4k charge for you from the damage you take plus like, you know, whatever you're doing to the tank. It's a lot. You can get to 15k actually very easily from this position just based on the units that we've seen. So the first thing we're always going to be doing is we're going to be taking out the anti-air. And this will give me a little more vision to see what's there. And wow, I see another tank there, that 8 HP tank. What are you doing there? You don't need to be there. And I did a little fiddling in the calculator and realized that the Andy superpower with 2 towers is extraordinarily likely to actually one-shot that tank because it's on a road. So I was like, okay, this is way too good of a deal that I'm getting here. We're going in like 100%. It's just a matter of optimization. We go in here, we see all this stuff, but it's time. So use that 6 HP tank, but he's going to get repaired up by the power. This guy takes chip damage, but it doesn't matter because all that chip damage is going away. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Anti-air comes in, clear an infantry, but he's going to end up behind the tank wall. So that ends up being a pretty safe spot for him. Tank gets cleared off, guaranteed because it's 2 towers. We don't quite get the roll there, but that's okay. We can just finish it off with an infantry. And again, we use the second anti-air, but this is going to end up behind a bunch of units, so it's still pretty safe. And now we've got enough for the hyper upgrade. So all this chip damage. So we went from like 128 to 142. So we healed 14k from the hyper repair, which is or hyper upgrade. I have whatever it's called. The power did a lot of healing for me. It was really efficient because I kept those weak units, and now I've got all these infantry up here. These guys are all ready to fight. Like I was kind of running on fumes in this top front, but now like never losing this property, and I get these 2 properties in the center now. So now 2k income lead has been secured, and we can clean up the rest now because that recon now is full HP, so you can go in and kill that infantry one shot. We see some more stuff, but who cares? And now we got 1 extra movement on that tank there, so he can reach that 8 HP tank. And even if somehow we had lost that roll, we had the anti-air ready to go to finish it off if we needed to. But we don't need to, because this is just a giant wall of humanity now. And if we look at the damage we've done, all of a sudden it's 80 to 40. And a lot of that damage, I mean, we just healed 14k of it, right? So it's even worse. It's like 50k in terms of like the difference in army value, just back of the envelope. And move the artillery here in case if an anti-air comes here to clear the copter, then this ends up being a one-shot because the anti-air would be on a road. So and we're going to be switching to Jess. So Jess artillery attacking a anti-air on road with 2 towers is going to be a one-shot. So that would, even though that copter is very exposed, the counterattack potential is there. And now we're just going to be setting up with everything else. And look at this gigantic wall of humanity. Like, in terms of unit kills, 22 to 11. So this is the end. If this plays out any farther, then it's just going to be we can just trade, and things will end in our favor because we got way more stuff. But that doesn't happen because our opponent just abandoned the game, timed out, and that was the end. So we win this one. This, I think, was a very clinical game in many regards. Obviously, we totally owned the early game. Kind of left the door open a little bit with like some sloppy stuff. Got a little bit outplayed in the early mid game, but let's take a look at this game with full vision. And I think it'll help us understand why things played out the way they did, especially in the mid game. So we've already seen the first part of this. So this is after the tank gets popped. So we see there's another tank, and then the recons show up. We've got our little early game skirmishes here. So this was the key turn right here, where this is the big commitment. And it took out, our artillery and a bunch of infantry, but ultimately led to getting a lot of vehicles popped, and then it's a medium tank. It's a medium tank. We never even saw this medium tank the whole game, but it was a medium tank that was built on this turn. And the problem is that now this turn rolls around, and the tank's not there, and there's just no way to continue fighting there. So by the time this disengage happens, it's basically the end. And I think like attacking this 8 HP guy into the 4 HP tank it's just a mistake. Like it doesn't accomplish anything. It gives me more charge for no reason, basically. And that ended up being important later on, because not only did I got a turbocharge, and I got the Andy hyper upgrade, and my opponent ended up with 0 powers the whole game, and that shouldn't happen. Like that's not how it works. But yeah, so that medium tank just chills in the forest because he can't engage. And then finally this turn goes off. He sends stuff in, but I mean the medium tank can't fight anything. It's out of range of this guy unless he powers, and you can't go in here because the artillery is there covering it. And actually a bomber was built, which is, I mean, it's good timing for that because they built a neo tank, but the problem is that everything's dead. And if you look at army value, it's 60k, and then whatever attack happens next, now I've got Jess is going to get overdrive. So it's going to be hyper repair into overdrive, and then everything else on the map is going to explode. Because if you just look at like the number of vehicles that can fight here, like so medium tank kills a tank somewhere, right? That's one, and these 2 guys kill something, and then like maybe these 2 guys kill something. Anti-air kills the copter, and that's it. That's all the vehicles. And so then what happens? You've got all this stuff and just overdrive, and it all explodes. So this game was definitely over despite the timeout. Like there was no doubt about where this was going. And so I'm going to be advancing to the bracket, or to the finals, I guess, the overall finals. That'll be interesting. I have seen some of the other players that have qualified for the overall finals, and it is going to be packed with extraordinarily good players. Talos is in there, X-OLDMAN, who I'm probably going to end up matched up against in the first round because it just always happens. Elio is in there already. I think Get Good has a potential to make it. I think that's one of the outstanding matches. Hapahali is in their last round as well, and so could potentially make it. Kill Me First is in there. I think there's some other newer names that have made it as well that I'm less familiar with, but there's a lot of really good players. It's going to be extraordinarily tough, but should be fun. And I think I've seen some of the tiers. There's some pretty clowny stuff coming up for the final. So who knows how that'll go, but it'll be a little bit, because we got to wait for all the other matches to complete to get there. I think this is the 6th one out of the 8 that has completed, so we need a little bit more time for that to get started. But yeah, I think that's gonna cover it for this game. In other news, Smacky Cup 6 round 2 is, well, it's about to end. That video will be coming shortly after it ends. I promise you, you will not want to miss that one. That one's going to be real interesting and really good to watch. So look forward to that. I don't necessarily say that about all my videos, but like, trust me, stay tuned for that one. It's you've not seen anything like this before, for sure. Not from me. So look forward to that. Let's see. In other news, kind of a busy summer for me. One thing that I'm thinking about, I kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the video. I've been kind of going through some health stuff the past 2 months, especially. Past couple of weeks have been better, actually, a lot better. But one thing that's been kind of sticking in my mind is I've been thinking about making a video in the format that we all are accustomed to, very long, with me just kind of talking about some stories from my personal life. And you could kind of just take this on faith from me, but I have a lot of, I think, very, very crazy, unusual, memorable, interesting stories, because my life has been very unusual and interesting in a lot of ways. And I'm thinking about like how I might organize, the content for something like that, and it'd probably just be like a one-off. It's not something that I want to do regularly, but I'm thinking about it for maybe later this year. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you'd be interested in that, I would love to hear that in the comments, just to kind of encourage me, because I think it's maybe a little bit uncomfortable for me to kind of put myself out there, but at the same time, like I know it'll be like really good. You just have to believe me that I've told my stories to many people, and they're kind of blown away, and I know people would get a lot out of it. So that's kind of what's on the mind right now, but some stuff to look forward to, and we'll be back with that Smacky Cup 6 game probably in a couple days, if we're being totally honest. Like, I think that's where we're headed. So look forward to that. Until then, see you next time. Thanks for watching, and have a lovely summer.